Good morning, everyone. Good to have you with us again. Today, we are going to be addressing two questions. I received many questions, and recently I received two pertinent and very interesting questions, which I want to share with you today. Number one, what is the Jewish view of dealing with the current COVID-19 pandemic? Number two, why do many Orthodox Jews eat fish and meat separately using different dishes and utensils? Believe it or not, both of these questions are actually related to each other, and today you are going to find out how on this edition of Breakfast with the Rabbi. But first, my requisite Breakfast with the Rabbi tea. All right, needed something to wake me up. So I want to first address the issue of fish and meat, and this will lead me right into the COVID-19 question as well. So firstly, you need to know the following. There are three categories of prohibited foods and beverages, for that matter, in Jewish tradition. What are they? Well, you have, number one, foods which are prohibited by the Torah, by the Bible, either explicitly, for example, pork, camel, things like that, or implicitly, like mixing milk and meat, which we learn from the verse, you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. You should never kick a kid, but you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. That verse is a very complicated verse, and we'll get into that another time. The second category of prohibitions on food are rabbinic. For instance, one may not mix milk and poultry together. Also for another time, but what I'm trying to do is to give you a frame of reference. And then, finally, I come to our topic for today, the third category of items forbidden for reasons pertaining to one's health. The mixture of fish and meat falls under this very category. By the way, we're going to talk about the Talmud. This is actually a Talmud. It's called the Gemara cup. Only in Brooklyn can you find something like this. All right, cup actually means head in Yiddish, you should know. In my favorite tractate of the Talmud, which is Psachim, on 76b, it states the following. It says that fish cooked with meat may not be eaten because it is likely to lead to davar acher, something else. And Rashi, the great medieval commentator, understands those words to be referring to tsarat, leprosy. The Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, rules that one must be careful not to eat fish and meat together because it may cause tsarat, leprosy. Remember that in the Code of Jewish Law, there are two primary views which are presented. You have the Mechaber, Rabbi Joseph Caro, who gives voice to the Sephardic point of view, and you have the Ramah, Rabbi Moses Isserles, who gives voice to the Ashkenazic point of view. Rabbi Isserles writes that lichatchila, which means under ideal circumstances, one must be careful not to roast meat and fish together in the same oven. However, ex post facto, one who cooked fish and meat together in a single oven may eat the fish and the meat. These laws were written in the 16th century at a time when leprosy was still a problem in the world, but was beginning to decline. I believe that it is for this reason that Rabbi Isserles took the lenient point of view. And if you look at literature in the 17th century, it will confirm that my speculation does have some merit. Rabbi Avraham Gumbiner, one of the greatest scholars of Poland and in the world during the 17th century, who was known by the name of his famous book, the Magen Avraham, a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, said that there are many natural phenomena mentioned in the Talmud that are no longer applicable today, meaning in the 17th century. The health concern of eating fish and meat, he says, is an example of something that used to be a legitimate concern, but is simply no longer an issue to worry about today. Now, it's important to note that he was in the minority in holding this point of view. The opinion of the majority of poskim, of halachic decisors, was that the prohibition of eating fish and meat together does remain intact today. They believe that even if modern medicine does not recognize these health concerns, we can never be sure, we can never be absolutely certain that the concerns are outdated. So it remained in effect amongst the majority of observant Jews as a precaution which has the status today as a custom rather than a commandment of an obligatory nature. I believe that the custom should remain intact. Like any other custom, however, it should not be observed mindlessly or by rote. When we eat fish and meat separately, the custom should serve as a warning to us to avoid behaviors and activities which are dangerous in nature. Keep in mind that the Code of Jewish Law didn't merely prohibit fish and meat mixed together. It prohibited many things and activities due to health considerations. Let me give you some examples. Exposed beverages, because the rabbis feared that snakes would have drunk from them and left behind venom, something which apparently occurred quite frequently at that particular time. Some other examples. One needs to be careful from human sweat, since all human sweat is deadly poison except for sweat of the face. One must refrain from putting coins in one's mouth because it's covered with dried saliva of those afflicted with boils. One should not put a loaf of bread under his armpit because of the sweat. Now, I once did that by mistake when I was carrying many items after going shopping on one Erev Shabbat, and I had to discard the bread, but I made sure never to make a habit of doing such a thing ever again. The point is that these prohibitions based on health considerations set a clear precedent that in every generation the rabbis must do their due diligence to protect the Jewish people from dangerous situations. In the era of COVID-19, we are faced with new considerations. It is essential that the rabbis ban large weddings, large gatherings for prayer due to the risk of spreading the virus. And when legal vaccinations become available, rabbis must advocate for it. It's very, very important to encourage our communities to get vaccinated. It will save lives. It's interesting because in the ultra-Orthodox community, you have many rabbis who have placed bans on television and internet usage, presumably to guard against spiritual illness. And likewise, they must also make provisions to guard against physical illness as well. In today's day and age, by the way, when the internet has become a necessity, I don't see how you can fully ban it. But nevertheless, I think you get my point. Also, praying with a minion is important, but not if it poses a risk to people's health. In Jewish tradition, a person is only obligated to give up his or her own life for 3 sins. Sins related to sexual immorality, murder, right? Someone tells you to go murder somebody else, you're not allowed to do it under any circumstances. And number 3, idolatry. We are not permitted to worship idols under any circumstances. These are the things you must give up your life for. When it comes to a minyan or other gatherings, one should never risk his or her own life. The Jewish people are commanded in the Torah to take care of their physical health just as they are obligated to care for their spiritual health. There is a well-known Talmudic dictum, Chamira sakanta meisura, that something dangerous should be treated more seriously than something which is forbidden. In other words, dangerous activities must be treated with greater diligence and stricter standards than halachically prohibited activities. The Rambam, Maimonides, writes that one who engages in unhealthy activities and declares that he has the right to do as he wishes to his own body is deserving of lashes. According to the Sefer HaChinuch, it is our responsibility to guard against natural occurrences which may harm our bodies, not only things that can end a person's life, but also things that can damage a person's body. Sefer HaChinuch, by the way, written in Spain in the 13th century. So the origins of the prohibition of mixing fish and meat together emerged out of health considerations. And just as we were concerned about leprosy hundreds of years ago, we must be equally and perhaps even more concerned about current health risks, especially a pandemic which continues to invade our world and disrupt the normal way in which we live. Every decision of a religious nature must enhance our ability and the ability of others to live in this world as healthy physical and spiritual beings. There is nothing courageous about performing a mitzvah which poses a danger to you or to others. In fact, such activity falls into the realm of mitzvah haba'ah be'avera, a mitzvah being performed through the commission of a sin. It says in Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, Ushmartem et chukotai v'et mishpatai asher ya'aseh otam ha'adam v'chai bahem ani Adonai. It says, you shall keep my laws and my rules by the pursuit of which v'chai bahem, man shall live not die, but live. Our objective must be to live for God with knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and love, and to perform all of God's commandments with integrity.